If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
After decades of public service, Illinois Congressman Mike Bost has arguably reached the pinnacle of his career this year after he became the chairman of the U.S. House Veterans Affairs Committee. And that gives the Murphysboro Republican a big say over policies that affect scores of people who served in the military. On the latest episode of Politically Speaking, Bost talks about his priorities as chairman and other major issues coming to the forefront of Congress. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, an in-depth examination of Missouri and Illinois politics.
The instant we got to Illinois, we joined the Green Party. This was 2000.
So I've tried to push for those that I think are honest and really care about the future of the city.
You know, this wasn't a path that I thought I would choose in 2012 when I was able to win the closest Republican victory in the nation.
If it's something that will help Southern Illinois, I'll work with him on it. If there's something he's doing wrong, then you got to fight him on it.
I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment. I believe less government is better, and I believe local control is better.
I choose to fight for working families and for union members.
And welcome to Politically Speaking. I am your host, St. Louis Public Radio's political correspondent, Jason Rosenbaum. Joining me in studio, he covers all things Metro East for St. Louis Public Radio.
Will Bauer.
And joining us via phone, he is the congressman for Illinois' beautiful and scenic 12th Congressional District,
Mike Bost.
Will's actually going to ask the first question about how beautiful and scenic your district is.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to take you back to the last time you were on Politically Speaking, which I listened to. That was back in 2018 when you represented a much larger portion of the Metro East.
Yes.
And it was in the middle of a competitive primary, but now you represent a much redder district of Southern Illinois.
Yeah, it is the most red district that's ever been drawn in the state of Illinois. It is. The district before was 11 1/3 counties, which included a section of Madison County. That was all taken away. It also the former district also had all of St. Clair County. Now, the only part of St. Clair County, we have everything but the valley. So East St. Louis, Washington Park, actually a large portion or almost all of Belleville is not in my district anymore. Cahokia, all of those down in the valley along the river, that is not in the 12th district. So we lost less than an actual landmass-wise, less than an actual county. It was part of Madison and part of St. Clair. But to make that up, it took 24 more counties on the going totally east and then somewhat north, and then I now represent 34 counties. The bottom 34 counties, only 2 of those counties are partial counties. That's St. Clair that I described a while ago, and Coles County. I have half of Coles County. Now remember this, that the most of those counties have a whole lot larger deer population than human population. It is, like I said, 1/3 of the land mass of the state of Illinois. It is very beautiful, and it is, it includes the Shawnee Forest. It is the largest industry is still Scott Air Force Base, but the second largest, which used to be SIU Carbondale, it's now ag, and so it's now Scott Air Force Base. Ag, and then SIU Carbondale is the order of the largest employers in that district.
Do you find it ironic that you were the beneficiary of Democratic gerrymandering, which the only way you can lose an election from now on is in a GOP primary, especially given your history that you were running in like a 50-50 Democratic district that was targeted.
and had for years. Whether it was, you got to understand, and my history as far as running, I was whenever I was city treasurer in Murphysboro, when I was on the county board when I was very young, there were a 14-member county board and only 2 Republicans. Whenever I was elected city treasurer, I was the first person in 60 years that was Republican that was elected to the city of Murphysboro as a citywide office holder. So it is something strange to me to have a district that is just pretty well solid glowing red, but it is neat because they are people that I'm like-minded with. Sometimes maybe not as conservative as they would like, but I think I am. I'm pro-life. That's never been a question. I'm definitely Second Amendment. I don't. The big government is not what I push for. I try to make sure that local control is there as much as we possibly can. So I fit the district pretty well, but it does cause for a lot of windshield time. For instance, I've got a political event tomorrow night, and I will be driving 2 hours and 45 minutes to be with them and give about a 15-minute speech, drive 2 hours and 45 minutes back. But it is part of what it is, and I can't afford an airplane or a helicopter, so I guess I'll just have to keep driving.
We'll have a couple of political questions at the end, but
okay.
Will, we want to start with your trip to the U.S. Mexico border. Will, you have a few questions on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you recently got back. Kind of what prompted the trip for you, and what did you find out when you were down there?
Yeah, there was two reasons. One, I feel like it is vitally important as a member of Congress that you do go down and see what's going on, not just hear about it hearsay from other members, even though you've seen it on different radio, TV, or heard about it on radio shows, TV shows, seen the coverage, but also understand as chairman of the VA committee, it was vitally important because what we're doing right now through the VA center down there at Laredo, they actually have an outpost at Eagle Pass, which is along the Del Rio sector, as well as a mobile veterans unit because we upticked our veterans chance to provide services, including counseling services, because we've seen a large uptick in the suicide rate among our Border Patrol agents, and many of those are veterans, so we are able to provide this service and was going down and meeting with them. I met with veterans there as well as patrol agents who are veterans. But then I did see the sector. You got to understand that Eagle Pass has a very large check station for illegals, so much so that now whenever I was down there, and you're not going to believe that these are the numbers that were going on and they consider that down, they were running 300 to 600 per day, but their normal time, and it's going to uptick again, is 2,000 to 3,000 per day that they process through. That's not counting gotaways. And it's that Del Rio sector. The reason why it was down to those numbers is the water's up to about 4.5 to 6 feet deep, and it's rushing through very, very quickly. And they redirect from the Mexican side where they go to, and they have moved to the west to a different sector where they could cross where the water was not as high. And all this was explained to me, and the maps were shown, and all the agents and what they're dealing with, and whether it's trying to make sure that that their people that they take into custody are processed correctly, that there are no underage. And there's a whole lot of them that are under adult age that are coming across by themselves. You can't sell them, and it's not really cells. They're holding rooms. I did see this. They're glass-fronted holding rooms they have restrooms that are set up correctly so that, for safety's reasons, the door that goes into the restroom, you can see their feet and you can see the top of the ceiling above them, so that if someone would try to get in there and get hurt or hurt somebody else, they can monitor that. But each one of the pods has like 10 different rooms in it like this that are all monitored. They house them in ways that and they transfer 600 to 1,200 out every day, besides the fact that they're checking in those 2,000 to 3,000. And so it is a very programmed system, but the bad thing is they know for a fact that known gotaways are about 125 to 128,000 a week.
Can you explain what that is? What do you mean?
What a gotaway is?
Yeah, what is a known gotaway?
A known gotaway is because all of the areas have a lot of cameras that all the border down there in that particular sector has a lot of cameras everywhere, whether it's that they have both drones and then they have mounted cameras. And so they can't chase them all. They don't have enough agents. So what they'll do is they'll monitor the cameras and they'll make a count of people that they know came across the border and they missed them.
Okay,
that's a known.
I got that. So what are they saying about why these undocumented immigrants are coming over the border? Like I'm sure you're going to say, well, it's because President Biden's lax immigration standards, but also some people would say they're fleeing countries that are very violent and they want to get to safety. So I'd be interested to hear the rationale for this.
There's several reasons. One reason is that one, they are being told in a poor country that there's an open border and they can come, and it's been broadcast to them, and they're very very it's very technical the way they do it. I'm telling you, they have and they pay a lot of money to try to get up here. I don't have any problem with them seeking to come to the United States. My problem is that we need to have a control factor on there, because what we're doing by not having a control factor and having them come here legally is we end up getting, which we know this for a fact, some very, very hardened criminals. Some that have already committed crimes, and I saw all the numbers on those, as many as 20 and 30 a week are coming across that are actually caught. From 130 different countries, last year alone was what was reported across that sector. And if we would put the controls in, one, we could control that flow of fentanyl that's coming across our borders. We can control and reduce the amount of human trafficking that is going on. We could control and actually allow people to come through in a legal manner if they want to even try to get their citizenship here. I'm not disagreeing that we need immigration reform, but we've got to have a controlled border before we can do it and do it right. We're the only nation in the world that doesn't have a controlled border. Only nation in the world. I was in Europe a couple weeks ago on some things with the looking actually with Jordan, with our allies in Jordan. Their borders are all controlled over there. They know who's coming across, why they're coming across, and it works real well. Our problem is just this, and the sad thing is, you can love Trump or you can hate Trump, but the policies that were in place were working. The Stay in Mexico policy, all of these things. It allowed for people still to immigrate to this nation. It allowed us to still use our migrant workers that wanted to come across. I come from a district that uses a lot of migrant workers.
Yeah, that was actually going to be our next question, and Will had a question about that.
Yeah, well, just given that you're on the House Ag Committee, I'm curious, are you getting pressure from ag groups that may not want as restrictive immigration policy because the ag operations could rely on that migrant or immigrant labor?
Let me tell you that is a important thing that we have to deal with when we deal with immigration law. There's, several years ago, there was a Goodlatch bill. Then Representative Goodlatch carried two bills. One, there was Goodlatch 1, Goodlatch 2. Goodlatch 2 they've actually moved the immigration laws for our farm workers over to the ag side rather than the immigration side, because it is so unique on what we can and need to do there. With touchbacks back to their home country, all of these different rules were going to be put in place. Those bills did not pass, but those are the things I did support. And we still support, one of the several members of Congress, one of them out of Washington State, a good friend of mine, Dan Newhouse, is very familiar with this because he himself has a large farm where they use a lot of immigrant work. He has cherries and apples and hops, and the list goes on. And he has both workers that have been with him and his family for 2 and 3 and 4 generations that are American citizens, but then you also have the immigrant workers as well, migrant workers as well. And so, yes, there's sensible things we can do, but the politics of it has got so bad that you can't get anybody to sit down and agree on anything with that. Even though, as I said, whenever I first got here, the Goodlatch bill and 1 and 2, I was hoping we would have got those passed because that was true reform that we needed to be wise about. But the thing is, we cannot do this unless we have a controlled border. And right now, and when Title 42 goes away, this border is going to go completely out of control.
You are the chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. It must be a little strange for you to have this much power over an important policy arena, after you spent, 20 years under Michael Madigan's thumb and didn't really get to do it?
18 of 20.
18 of 20?
My first two, we were in the majority. I just didn't know how good that was.
I know. So to your district, there's a pretty important aspect, which is Scott Air Force Base. And what is at the top of your list as priorities of chair of the committee that could help something like Scott Air Force Base?
Well, let me tell you, first off, remember, it's not just passing legislation. Quite often, everybody looks like Fraggle Rock that when a bill's passed, all of a sudden it's done and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, when you pass a bill, you're going to have to make sure that the agency implements it correctly. So if you remember last year, we passed the PACT Act, which deals with the toxic exposure, which was one of the largest bills ever passed to deal with our nation's veterans that have been exposed to toxic exposure since 9/11. Since the creation of that, our oversight of the VA to make sure that is implemented correctly. Another big issue that we're working on is modifying the VA. Our fastest growing group of veterans is our women veterans. And I don't know if you know this or not, but about 10 years ago, unfortunately, the VA was more like an old boys club, okay? And it was not built for the modern veteran that we have, which is those of both male and female. And as I said, the female part is growing faster than any place else. So we've got to make sure that we provide those services that are important to our female veterans. We're doing a good job of that, but we have to update our veterans' VA system. Remember, the VA system, a lot of it still operates about like the 1940s and 1950s, and we're trying to get that modernized to the level we can. One of the big issues that also is out there that we've had a lot of trouble with, been the nightmare of all nightmares, is the electronic health care changeover, which all 5 VAs, which are not even big VAs or small VAs, we tried to put it in. You would think that it would be very simple to switch over, but it ended up causing stress on our patients that we were providing care for, breakdowns in communications, all of these problems. But also what you want to remember about the VA is that the VA is the second largest bureaucracy in the world. And what I've discovered as being a VA chair is if you think there isn't a problem, wait 5 minutes because there's one going to come up. But we do have several bills that we're moving. As a matter of fact, we moved a group out of committee today that deal with everything from expanding the speed at which that services can be rendered. There was an expansion of and adding to an existing program that is very successful about putting veterans to work in technical careers where they have a 60-some% graduation rate, which is pretty high for a government program, and an 80% graduation rate with about a 65% placement rate in jobs that are paying well over $70,000 a year. So it's everything from implementing the GI Bill, the home loans, and then another thing that the VA deals with that people don't realize: every veteran cemetery in the United States and every veteran cemetery around the world and every veteran's monument around the world is under VA's control.
Congressman, I wanted to ask you about some reporting that I did earlier this month about a food donation box that was put in at Scott Elementary just off the base.
Okay.
And kind of the underlying reason they were putting this in is because 24% of active service members are food insecure. So as the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that figure, and is there something that you would maybe want to do about it?
Sure. Well, let me tell you that, and as a member of Congress, am I concerned about that? Yes, I am. As a VA chairman, I'm concerned about that, but that jurisdiction would fall under the Department of Defense. And this is a problem that the Department of Defense has had before. This same type of situation occurred whenever I was in the Marine Corps in the 1980s. Everybody who was an E3 or below was paid at such a low level that they qualified for food stamps even though they couldn't get them because they were employed by the military. Now, and remember, I was married and had children back then, and it was a very, very frustrating time, and that's we have made the investment. We increased last year the wages for our veterans. Now, what we need to look at is also, so you know this, a lot of it is the BAQ. Now, what BAQ is basically what is provided for married veterans and their families. It gets increased on a regular basis. It's something else we should look at, but we need to make sure that there is look. They're serving our nation. We need to make sure we make that investment.
Quick follow-up, and maybe along those same lines, someone had mentioned to me when I was reporting that story that it's been a few years since the basic allowance for housing had increased.
That was the BAQ.
Okay,
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay. And so
that's basic how. That's what that is.
Okay, good. And so, like, you know, it's increased some because it kind of adjusts every year on local housing prices. But also, like it was in the 80s, I'm imagining, inflation is still way higher than it should be to keep economists, politicians, and the public happy.
Sure.
What role, if any, should that play in it?
And these are the things we have to look at every time that we do each budget year. And that's also why they have committees of jurisdiction that they can keep track of, okay, what's the cost of living in Belleville area? What's the cost of living in L.A.? What's the cost of living in New York? And then understand the BAQ is adjusted based on where they station the men and women.
A couple more questions before we let you go. On the debt ceiling issue, you voted for
You're doggone right,
Speaker McCarthy's proposal.
Yep.
I understand why sometimes members of the House pass things that are going to get bottled up in the Senate. Like, you want to have a statement of principles about where you stand on something. But is there anything more than what you pass than just messaging here? Could you actually get some parts of this implemented in whatever the final agreement is?
The answer is yes, if the president and the Senate will now come to the table. Let me tell you what we were getting from the president before we passed this yesterday. No action, no negotiation, just send me a clean debt ceiling. That doesn't work. That's never been done before. Anytime we increase the debt ceiling, which we've got to do, okay, because you can't go belly up on your debt. You got to pay your debt. It is, even though I didn't vote for the last COVID bill, it still was spent out there, and now we got to, we can't just go debunk on our debt, on our what we owe. That being said, you don't let the spending habits keep going the way they are. And so what we were doing with this is we've sent that bill over because what they said was, the Republicans in the House will never come together and vote and get something passed. Well, now we did. So now it's in the ball's in their court. I believe that you'll see them all of a sudden wake up to the fact that they've got to come now and come to the table. We don't have to have everything that we put in there, but we sure have to sit down together, and we can't just all of a sudden keep raising the debt limit and let bad spending habits continue to happen out of this administration. We just can't.
Our final question before we let you go. There was an article in Politico earlier this week that you might have a primary challenger. He happens to be Darren Bailey, the Republican candidate for governor in 2022, and he apparently visited Mar-a-Lago last week. And President Trump and his influence, especially on Southern Illinois. He came and did a rally for you.
He did too.
Do you fear Darren Bailey if he ends up deciding to run against you next year?
Let me tell you that right now I'm focusing on doing the job. I've never feared anyone running against me. This is a process that is great because the people can run. But let me tell you this, I've got a great relationship with President Trump. The only thing that President Trump and I ever disagreed on was letting Rod Blagojevich out of jail. And it still wasn't a disagreement. I just explained to him all of the reasons why I didn't think it was a good idea.
All right, before I let you continue there, that had to be the most unanimous impeachment of anybody
You're doggone right it
except
was.
one person. One person.
I was the first one to ask for that. You know that, right?
Yeah, I did know that, but continue. I always love beating up on our former governor.
And you should have been in the room for the 3 conversations I had with the president on that. But at any rate, but the president and I still have a very, very good relationship. Matter of fact, I was at Malargo on President's Day, my wife and I, visiting with him and also telling him we would be endorsing him during the next election. So, well, the things that, if you notice, no one has said that Trump has endorsed them yet. Okay? So, I've got a great relationship, always have had with the president. My wife and I, my wife did prayer cards for the president, which was a unique thing that was done with his staff whenever he was in office. So we do have that good relationship. So will that affect that race if it occurs? Well, I don't know. I don't know where the president's going to be. I know what I'm doing. I'm providing services for the 34 counties that I represent to the best of my ability, and my staff is too. I'm carrying legislation that represents the people that I represent, and am doing it from a position that, as a chairman of a committee that is vitally important to this United States. And somehow I've been blessed by that, by my colleagues to put me there, and the voters to put me here. And I'm going to keep doing that. And if somebody wants to challenge me and say that I'm not doing something right, I'll be glad to answer for anything I'm doing.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for talking with us and also giving us 5 extra minutes. This was supposed to be a 20-minute interview. It's actually a 25-minute one, so we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Politically Speaking is a product of St. Louis Public Radio, which is a part of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Is there any way for people to get a hold of you, either on social media or any other ways? You mentioned some of the counties are small. They may not have good internet, so if they need to use carrier pigeons.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's another issue. We can deal with digital divide, but that's neither here nor there. But bost.house.gov, they can get hold of me there. They can look it up on all of our offices and find the office that closest to them. We have main office locations in Mascoutah, Murphysboro, and Effingham, and then here in D.C. as well, obviously.
Thank you very much, and until next time, so long. Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thanks.
Bye.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.